You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Tasty Trade. You take the unbeaten path. You root for the away team. You wear shorts in winter. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. So why wouldn't you trade with a broker that lets you go your own way? Tasty Trade. Stocks, options, futures, and more. You choose. You trade. Chart moves with hundreds of custom indicators. Stare at the candles till you see them in your sleep. See it, click it, trade it on mobile, web, or desktop. Supported by a trade desk that knows how traders think. The data, the tools, the knowledge. Get what you need to make smart moves. Go to tastytrade.com/pod to see for yourself, genius. Tasty Trade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody, that music means we are back once again. It is time to rock out with everyone's favorite bi-weekly source for all things options. Yes, it is time once again for the Option Block. I will be your host. I will be your guide. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. Make sure you're listening to the full network. If you're not, you're missing out nearly a dozen shows. And, of course, if you want to go above and beyond, the pro is always there for you, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Lots of awesome goodies waiting for you over there, including some awesome giveaways and all sorts of other fun stuff. Monday, it's time to shake things up, to wake things up, listeners, with a little 80s trivia. I, of course, am joined on the Monday episode by the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, as well as by the uncleist of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management. They are now putting on their thinking caps because it is time, listeners, for our 80s trivia challenge. Here we go. All right, listeners, let's do it. Time for the 80s trivia challenge. Today's one, we'll see. We'll see what it's going to be real easy, or it's going to be maybe hard. I don't know. But we shall see. Get your hands on your buzzers, gentlemen. There will be no audible chime-ins. This will have to be a buzz through the chat is the only accepted answer. And then from there, of course, we'll see what your actual answer is. But listeners, we're going to talk about a TV show today from the 80s. A pretty seminal one. Kind of kicked off a whole genre. In fact, a whole division of channels now, you could probably say. But this kicked off actually outside of the 80s back in 1979. So it started a year before that seminal decade of the 80s. But then it really went through the... Oh, wow. Already, the Rock Lobster is in.
Going for it. I'm going Battlestar Galactica.
Wow. No.
I thought it was the sci-fi genre. I tried to jump.
I will say you are going to kick yourself when you hear what the actual question is, because this is one that was, I don't know about tailor-made, but it was up your alley. All right, that leaves it open to the Uncleist of Mikes. This was a show that debuted in 1979. It was really one of the first, if not the first, kind of home improvement shows, and it ran till 1989. I'll give you a hint. Season 1 focused exclusively on the renovation of a Victorian-style home in Massachusetts. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what show am I talking about?
I'm going to go with This Old House.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
How many times have I joked about this, Mr. Rock Lobster? This was your chance to maybe get a point, and you dove in early with
I just thought Tosaw would be all over the sci-fi thing.
All right.
Oh.
All right. Get your hands on the buzzers. There's one more, so get ready. Who was the host? Go quick. Okay, I heard Andrew. Who was the host?
No, you said hands on the buzzers. I buzzed first.
I put the buzz
He typed
first.
buzz first. He's ahead of you in the chat if you see to. He's ahead of you in both. So go ahead, Andrew.
Bob Vila.
Yes.
And by the way, listeners, it's an official buzz I put in there.
You did. That is.
Yeah, it is. I didn't see it.
That is one. Uncle Mike's still salty about the events of this weekend. But so a point for Uncle Mike. Rock Lobster. I mean, does it get more up your alley than Bob Vila and This Old House, Mr. Rock Lobster? This should have been
but I was leaning with. I know you love sci-fi and all that stuff, and I thought you were going to be pulling that. And I thought Battlestar Galactica was like a late '70s, early
That
80s.
also is too. I mean, if you're going my genre, maybe that's the right way to go. But when have I ever done I haven't done an '80s wrestling thing in forever. I haven't done any of those things. I'm trying to make it a more egalitarian contest for all out there. So at least you salvaged half a point. Uncle Mike, though, continuing to throw dirt in the hole, getting a full point for This Old House as we keep on going into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And we're starting to see a gentle, maybe malaise, gentle drift to this market, listeners. We have been rallying full on for the better part of the last week, post-election, listeners. The market's really obviously liking either the results of this election or the fact that it is behind us decidedly, one way or the other. Probably a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B, but we were rallying hard. It was a banger out there. So just a wild week out there for the bulls. Uncle Mike probably pretty happy out there. As we're kicking off the show, we are kind of gently drifting, actually back below the 6,000 level in the S&P, ever so slightly, off about a 0.03%. NASDAQ off a full 1/3%, and the Dow up about 2/3%. We were looking pretty much green across the board. S&P was north of 6K, got up to, looks like around pretty close to 6,015 today, a couple of times, before coming back down below it. Now that's it, Liz. That's the blow off top. Here we go. 3,000 or bust. The S&P. The VIX kind of holding court right around a 15 handle as we kicked off the show. Down about 1/4 point. VVIX down 2 points to about an 88 out there. We'll see if this vol erosion holds or if maybe we got a little bit of a downturn here and VIX kind of firms up. We shall see. And of course, let's go around the horn now. As our winner from this week, he stole it right out from under the Rock Lobster in his own genre of woodworking and home improvement. Mr. Uncle Mike, first off, my condolences to the results this past weekend. My son plays in that league with those teams. Let's just say the Catholic League in Chicago, they don't mess around. Those are some of the best teams in the nation that you guys played. So I understand it's a rough challenge, let's just say, out there. So my hats off. I'm sure your team put up a rousing fight, sir. And then B, if you have any memories, any enduring memories of one Bob Vila, have at it. And then C, what's catching your eye in A? It was an Uncle Mike type of day. It looks like it's starting to turn a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I'm really proud. I'm, for our listeners, I coach football at St. Charles North High School. I'm the offensive line coach there, and really proud of my guys. I mean, we actually came out to an 8-0 lead on the Caravan of Mount Carmel, and just wasn't our night. But one thing in the Catholic League, nothing against Catholics, but in the Chicago Catholic Football League, they what do they do? They recruit, let's say. So they have players from Indiana, from Wisconsin, and it's kind of difficult to beat them. And just to give you an idea of it, the last time that Mount Carmel lost to a public league school was actually in 2018, and it was to St. Charles North in 2018, and they were not having any of that this past Saturday night. But kudos to them. They got a good football team, the best team money can buy. So I gotta take my hat off to them. But with that being said, in terms of Bob Vila and the 80s, I was actually I was getting ready to buzz in and go another route, because when you said this show started in 1979 and started a lot of other shows, I was thinking Nickelodeon, and I was about to say you can't do that on television. And Andrew stopped me from doing that, actually, because I was getting ready to buzz in and do that and do what Andrew did, but he did what he did before I did. So that's what happened with it. Not really much of a this old house watcher. What I do remember, what I did watch in the 90s quite a bit was Tim the Tool Man Taylor on Home Improvement, and he always had his rivalry with Bob Vila. You knew it was going to be a good episode whenever Bob Vila would come on to Tool Time or Home Improvement, whatever way you want to look at it. So those are my enduring memories of the Tool Men from the 80s and 90s. In terms of these markets, it's kind of making me feel aged in some way because of the fact that we're talking about 6,000. And I was thinking about, I can remember a few years back when the Viceroy was on the show, we're talking about 2,000 we were just tinkering around that 2,000 mark for months and months and months, it seemed. And I looked back on that, I'm like, holy cow, that was 10 years ago. So we've been doing this a long time on this show. So that's the first thing that made me feel, but definitely we were above the 6,000 mark. We were at 60.17 today. Now we're back down to 59.91. So we did have a little bit of a rally going. Now we're down slightly on the day on the S&P. So it'll be interesting to see how we close at it. But for the time being, we're at new all-time highs and are near new all-time highs. Not at them because we didn't make one today. So I can't say we're not making one now. So I can't say my trademark saying, unfortunately. But when looking at this, we're really right there. And so who knows, maybe we'll get a 20 or 30 point rally, and I'll say it in around the block. But some things which I'm watching, we have had a little bit of a rally in bonds since the Fed announced that they are going to cut rates. Bonds are a little bit down on the day today. Silver and gold have been selling off over the course of the last few days as well. And I think that's just money going into stocks at this point in time. As to where it's going, what it's doing, it's like we're kind of rebalancing a little bit. Just looking at some of the sectors in terms of where we are at. One of the things that I noticed shortly after the election is just the rise of JP Morgan. And in looking at that, the thing that banks apparently liked what they saw with the election. Just looking at XLF, the financial sector, that's had a nice rally. It's up nearly 10% since the election. And so that's one area with which I think we need to keep an eye on, because gaps like that typically don't last forever. And don't get me wrong, I am a bull. I know what I am, and that's what I do. But just have the understanding that markets are not going to go up forever. And that's the first one that really sticks out on me in terms of what's happened since the election. Now, the thing that I would recommend looking at, and what I'll be looking at throughout the week for myself and client portfolios, is how do we take advantage not only of this bull market, but how can we take advantage of actually taking deltas off the table? Well, wait a minute. Why on earth would I want to take deltas off the table? Well, I'll tell you, I don't. But what you can do to protect yourself. Before the election, we're at VIXs in the 20s. Now we have a VIX at the 15 level. So now may be a time to consider adding some index puts to your portfolio. That could be a way with which you could hedge this market coming up. And if you don't want to be the guy that had the opportunity to sell at 6,000 when the market went back to 4,500, puts could be your answer. So those are the things that I'm looking at right now. And that is all I got for now.
All right. Are puts the answer, listeners? Do you think puts are the answer? I guess we'll find out as we go on out to the Rock Lobster, sir. We talked to you, Mr. Rock Lobster. on the election night special. We haven't chatted with you since. It's been nearly a week. So first off, maybe let's start there. What are your thoughts on just the kind of insane rally we've seen pre and post election? And then B, what's catching your eye in a bit of a mixed bag today?
Well, I mean, I think part of just the rally was relief that it was over. I mean, the only thing you could find, well, maybe not everybody, but I thought pretty much unanimously, like everybody was kind of just tired of the whole, like the whole shooting match, as far as, the rhetoric in the previous run up to the election and just all of it. It was very overwhelming. Just a lot, it was just a lot of, and there wasn't much else that people were talking about that of like good, positive things that, generally happen in this country day to day. So the fact that it's over, I think, and that's normally, what happens, market cycles, as soon as you have some certainty, there's relief. It's, historically, every time the USA has gone to war or something like that, as kind of mercenary as it sounds, like as soon as we go in, the market rallies, because there's always that sort of nobody wants to do anything prior to and then after the event. Speaking of on Veterans Day, to all the veterans out there, but that's historic. That's happened, with remarkable frequency. So it's not surprising that that's happened. Also trying to put out some, early policy stuff. I think overall, like, Trump, I guess, is a fan of Bitcoin. So there's a lot of Bitcoin movement. So there's sort of that. I just think there's, it's when, everybody kind of knows what we got with Biden. And that was known. Everybody knew we have with Trump. And they're like, okay, well, Elon Musk is in there. He's a great businessman. Maybe, who knows? Maybe they like the team and people are a little bit more gung ho on it. So, and that's just showing up in the options, and they're showing up in equity prices just flying. What you really see too is, like, if you notice just today, like, okay, so the Qs are a little bit above their all-time highs, but SPX is making more aggressive highs. So you have that moving things along. So like, Apple is kind of stuck. And I think what's happening is folks or traders, investors are looking at stocks that have not performed as well as the magnificent Mag. Everybody piled into the Mag 7 because of AI, and they were the clear winners with, big tech, or big tech was a clear winner with AI. Now, all of a sudden, you're looking at some more downstream, sort of tertiary companies, like, other companies eventually will benefit from just making, being more productive. It's usually makes the bottom line increase. And so you're seeing, money flow to other places. Although it is flowing like crazy to anything related to Bitcoin at all. So again, Tosaw and I sit here and we shake our heads because we don't get it. I'm old, so I have an excuse. But the interest around Bitcoin is again, human nature, there's really nothing new under the sun like that. So it's not totally surprising. But that's where we find ourselves. So as far as stocks go, economic growth is ultimately a positive, and the market is betting on some more growth-oriented policies, and less government and less regulation, which generally, is generally led to growth. And we'll see if it actually comes to pass. So at this point, we're in, I would say, the honeymoon phase of everything. The election's over. There were no major city incidents that everybody was worried there's going to be, Antifa was going to do this or that, or whoever lost was going to be bent out of whack. And none of those things have come to pass so far, which is good. It's positive. So, also listening to solutions maybe on the homeless problem, maybe throwing it back on some of the states, for them to come up with their own solutions instead of a federal one. So there's a little bit of gamesmanship going on, trying to maybe potentially solve some of these problems or start, give things a kick. So, and I think ultimately Mark said it really well in Option Pit in some of our sessions. He's like, it's just the relief that it is over is enough to get people to buy more stocks. And one thing I have, a lot of friends, a lot of people were on the sidelines waiting to see who won. And if you're sitting on the sidelines all year watching the Dow or SPX go from 4,200 up to where we are, I think it's a 25% gain this year. It's pretty solid. If you're underinvested or haven't been, didn't own any stocks this year, you're feeling not great. So it would not surprise me to see kind of a goofy high number into the end of the year, as long as the current level of sort of rhetoric and positivity kind of keeps going forward. You never know. Tomorrow's another day and something goofy could happen, but at least right now, things are moving in a positive direction, and generally stocks like that. The only thing that doesn't like this in general is VIX. VIX does not like this, and we laughed. I can't believe we've been doing this show this long, but remember that last election where we're like, no way VIX is 9 with Trump as president, and both of us had egg on our face. So
that was 2 elections ago.
Yeah, 2 elections ago now. So I've almost been doing this show, I think, for 12 years. So it's I think overall you got to be positive. I was a buyer of stocks during Biden, even though it was kind of never felt like the easiest thing to do, but ultimately America works, and it appears that the next president will want it to work too. So we'll see how it all goes out. They do have this federal spending thing they have to deal with, which we've talked about probably every week on this show for the last, I don't know, when the whole COVID thing started, and then the congressmen just got drunk spending money, like more so than they ever have. And I felt like that sort of lifted a veil of respectability to government spending, like, oh, wow, we could just do whatever we want and get away with it. So I think all the parties own a little bit of the inflation thing, but Biden definitely got hung with it because he was just the last guy, I think, holding the, in the musical chairs. He was like the last one standing, sort of holding the bag. Some of his policies also did not help with the inflationary spiral going up, but he was definitely left holding it. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. And we'll also see if it actually starts to show up in some inflation numbers, if that's possible. So anyway, from that point of view, we sit here and, we were just trading 6,000. We were up and another thing too is every 1% up now is 60 points SPX. So those 1%, like all of a sudden, those a $10 straddle in the SPY is not very much anymore. It's only 1.5%. So things can move. I'll just remind everybody of that. But as of right now, there's a lot of, I think, post-election euphoria. It's just how long it lasts until it calms down somewhat.
Let's check out some of that euphoria. By the way, that is terrifying, Uncle Mike, when you say it, that 10 years ago we were with the Viceroy, because he was on the show later in this run, actually. He wasn't on in the earliest incarnation of the show. So That was Grigas and everybody else back in the day. So Navabi, all those guys. So yeah, that was a decade ago with the Viceroy. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. But I digress. Time flies when you're talking markets. Listen, let's talk some options and see what's popping off out there today. First question, is it popping off out there today? The answer is, again, as usual, kind of depends where you look. If you're looking in VIX land, you're having a bit of a banger day. 735,000 contracts on the tape today. ADV 831. Including a lot of that thanks to 100,000 of the April 39 calls going up today, followed by 89,000 for number 2 of the Jan 17s, 50,000 for number 3 of the Jan 16s. Looks like a little bit of vertical action. And maybe 47,000 of the Jan 16 puts. I know that looks like that synthetic. We've seen a lot out there. But let's see what's going on with these 39s. Usually that April, any sort of upside like that is usually part of some sort of vertical. Looks like this is just a roll. Looks like they're rolling the D's 39s 25,000 times out to April 39s. Looks like, is it actually an April 20 39s? That all went up at the same time. None of it marks spread, of course, listeners. So I have to kind of sit here and piece it all together on the fly, live on the show, which is always fun. But looks like we have an April 20 39. That makes more sense. Usually there's something else against them. Usually that would be 1 by 4 if they did it that way. 25,000 of the D's 39s for 24 cents. Looks like against 25,000 of the April 20s for 213. And then you take that money and you buy 4 of the April 39s for 70 cents. Obviously, then looks like there were sales on both. But again, don't get too hung up on the executions of these when they do these spreads, listeners. Even though they don't mark it as spread, because what fun would that be? But when they do these spreads, they can play with the execution a little bit. So don't get too hung up on that. But if past is prologue, they are probably selling 1 to buy 3 or buy 4. And that appears to be the case right now, setting up again, yet again in April. Or do you like those straight up? You like April 39s for 70 cents? That's a bit rich, but hey, you know, we've kissed the low 30s at least once, August 5th of last year. So you got some time between now and April. SPY, is SPY lighting it up today? The answer is no, 3.85 million. It's about exactly 500,000 below where we expect it to be this time of the show. The ADV, 7.1 million. The S, again, looking robust. So again, kind of a weird tale. The SPY is light, but the S is a little heavy at 1.95 million contracts on the tape in the S. The ADV, about 3.1 million. Let's do our little dance on the S right now. Let's just see. Let's just see the top 20 most active listeners. Is anything not going? Yeah, actually, there is. Looks like we have a 5,050. Looks like a put spread, maybe? Oh, no, opening on both. So yeah, it looks like a put spread. So 50-point wide put spread going up 43,736 times today. Listen, expiring on December 27th. So a late December put spread. By the way, that would obviously be about 1,000 handles out of the money. Are we kissing a 5,000 handle by end of December, listeners? That'd be interesting. 1,000-point sell-off. What gets us there? Are we just blowing off? I was kind of joking earlier about the blow-off top, but maybe if this put spread is to be believed, perhaps that is the case. Of course, it's only 50-point wide put spread. So if you're hedging or speccing on 1,000-point downside, are you going to buy a 50-point wide put spread? I don't know. I've seen weirder things, but that's certainly a weird one. That's literally the only thing that is not expiring today. So we are 18 for 20 in the SPX today, listeners. Going the way of the dodo today. Small caps, IWM, 938,000 contracts on the tape for them against an ADV of 1.3 million. You know the deal with small caps. They're probably, I'm going to say, close to 50-50 not expiring 0 day. And that is the case again today. Looks like, in fact, the big dog today, we have a Dees 229, 225 put spread going up. It looks like maybe a roll. It's like opening on the 229s, maybe closing on the 225. So maybe rolling up the puts a little bit. 88,000 times. So there's 176,000 of your nearly 1 million contracts right there. So again, small caps, they kind of play all over the place. A lot of D's going up today. I'd say roughly 50% is expiring today, and the rest is kind of all over the place, including some Jan 215 puts going up 10,000 times today. So IWM, as we expect, all over the place. And the Qs, 2.15 million on the tape. So the Qs actually kind of light right now. Let's do the same analysis. Let's be even Steven here on the Qs. And the Qs, you know what? I see 2, 3, 4, 5. So the bottom 5 of the top 20 most actives, I should say. So fully a quarter of today's top 20 are expiring not today, but tomorrow. So we're not going that far out of our wheelhouse here, listeners. So it is still very near dated product. 2.15 million on the tape, the ADV 3.99. To the single names we go, listeners. Is it a hot single name day? Well, the answer is actually yes. It cost you, and tell you what, we'll re-rack it right now to get the most up to the second numbers we can get, and it just ticked up. That's kind of what I thought. So you know what? Cost you 361,000 contracts to break into the top 10 today. That's the most active we've seen in quite some time in the single names out there. That's more than respectable. That's up there pushing our upper bound. I'm trying to think if you've ever had a 400,000+ contract day to break into this. I'm sure we probably have. It just doesn't leap to mind for me. Probably at least one. But 360 is getting into that upper bound there. Listen, that's a pretty active day. That gets us to SMCI. Yeah, if you're like Uncle Mike and you're not a fan of anything crypto adjacent, crypto related, might want to cover your ears for a little bit. And you sure as hell don't want to tune into the crypto rundown coming up in about an hour from now. That's going to be a banger, listeners, hour and a half. Going to have Greg from our pals over there at Amber Data breaking down all the madness post-election. I know he wanted to come on the election special, couldn't make it, so he's going to have a lot to say about all the madness that is crypto right now. I mean, everything. Solana, you name it. Doge, rallying hard. Even, dare I say it, Shiba Inu. All the nonsense garbage in your crypto wallet. Looking pretty good this week, listeners. But number 10 is SMCI. As I say that, this one actually giving up some today, off about $1.60, trading 22.94, 6.5%. But volume-wise, light up the tapes, 361,000 contracts. By the way, over the last week, SMCI, it's still off another about $3 out there. So, yeah, this is one of the few issues we've seen out there in the kind of just sea of green. But SMCI still making it into the top 10 today. Number 9, we got RIOT. Haven't talked, it's a hot crypto time when we're back talking about RIOT. RIOT blockchain, or as they call themselves, RIOT platforms now. Haven't talked about this name in forever, and all of a sudden it's up $2.50 today, trading 15.25, up 19% just today. You go back to last Tuesday, Jesus, 9/18. It's up 66% in the last 5 days, listeners. My goodness. All things crypto all the time. Number 9, RIOT blockchain. I'm going to go out on a limb and just guess. Yeah, it's probably a whole freaking boatload of calls out there, listeners. We're kind of coming up against it, or I would go dive into that one. Number 9, RIOT blockchain. Number 8, it's the fruit company. Another one. I guess they don't have enough crypto exposure. They are taking it to the woodshed today, off $5, 505 to be precise. 221.92, off 2.25%. Of course, over the last, that pretty much just brings us back down to about in line with where they were heading into the election last Tuesday. They were 221.94 last Tuesday. They got down to about 221.83 today before recovering a little bit. So they rallied a bunch over the past week, but they've pretty much given it all back, Apple, right now, which is interesting. Number 8, 488,000. So maybe some folks thinking Apple, not the place to be in the Trump era. Number 7, MicroStrategy. Folks want to be out there today. 320.33, up nearly $50 or 18.5%. Man, this one's been on the rampage. This one's up 40% since last week. They were 233, up nearly exactly 100 handles. In fact, yeah, did it get there today? No, we're at the highs right now, actually. So didn't quite get there, but pretty close. Man, my goodness. Quite the run. 90+ handles out there over the course of the past week. Good for number 7, 580. Again, it shows you, listeners. We're only at number 7. We're already well north of 500,000 contracts. Some days we get to number 3, we're not north of 500,000. So heavy day out there. If you like crypto related and adjacent names, how about Mara? Number 6, 602,000. We were just talking, how long have we been talking on the crypto rundown? Those Jan 30s have been sitting out there forever. And I said, someone really noticed this range of the roughly 15 to 30, and we vacillate back and forth through that. And they were really hoping for a repeat to the upside out there. It wasn't looking that good. Those 30s were kind of hung out to dry. Today, Mara 24, almost 24.5, 24.40, up 5.15 or about 27% just today. Of course, over the past week, up 53%, about $8.50. So, yeah, those Jan 30s looking a hell of a lot better now than they did a week ago. My goodness, someone's a happy camper out there. And Mara, number 6, 602,000 contracts. If you don't want to play the crypto direction game, you just want to play the volume game, allow me to present number 5, Coinbase. 619,000 contracts on the tape, up 59 handles or 22% just today, trading 330 on the week. The past 5 days, it's up Oh my goodness. It's up 77% Coinbase. It was $185 a week ago, up 144 handles from there. So it hasn't quite doubled, but it's up nearly 80%. That's a big, hefty stock, listeners. They are really looking forward to the the Trump era, the post-Biden era. If you want another one playing the volume game, it's SoFi, number 4, 716 on the tape. This stock hitting some lofty levels, nearly $14 right now, $13.98, up 98 cents right now, or 7.5% just today. Over the past 5 days, up 27.5%, a little over 3 handles. SoFi, if you've been watching it for a while, has had a hard time breaking out of its range to the upside. Not the case right now. Number 4, 716,000. Number 3, Palantir. I mean, is there a name that's going to benefit more than Palantir in this administration? Look at their VP. Got some close ties, let's say, to the Palantir crowd. Palantir, number 3, 850, 60 and a quarter, up nearly $2 or 3.2%. Over the past week, it's up 12.5 handles or about 26%. Good for number 3, 850 for Palantir. Number 2, Nvidia, 144 and 3/4, giving up the ghost today, about $3 or nearly 2%. So all the old hot names kicked to the curb for crypto and some other fun things out there. Number two, yeah, Nvidia, 2.02. Maybe Trump winning and Elon getting pulled into the inner circle is going to be the thing that kicks Tesla back into the top spot, because that's the case again today. 3.13 million for look at this number for Tesla, 343, just ticked up $22. It hit 358 this morning. It was just threatening to break 200 in the wrong direction. What, a month ago? Or we were at 213 on Wednesday, October 23rd. We're at 343 right now. That is 130 handles, or 57.5% in just the past month, listeners. This is the stock that was having issues, let's just say, not that long ago. And then, bam, off to the races, 3.13 million for the top spot today. My goodness. If you want some banger earnings, we got them for you this week. Got Shopify tomorrow, Home Depot, Hertz, and Spotify. Cisco, Uncle Mike's favorite on Wednesday. Thursday, Walt Disney Company. Can they get out of their own way with the parks and the streamings? I guess we'll find out. AMAT on Thursday as well. Friday, Alibaba. I'm looking right now. We don't have a ton of things popping off immediately today, but we got a bunch popping off this week. Let's do really quick. Home Depot, 12th before the bell. 406 is where it was trading. They were pricing in about $15.5 in the past. They've moved about 13, so nearly $2.5 more juice. Is that merited in Home Depot? Well, I guess we'll find out. Mara, after the bell tomorrow. So on top of all this crypto madness, they also have earnings tomorrow, listeners. 12th after the bell. 19.25 is where, man, this report wasn't that long ago. And already that price is a distant memory. There were 19.25 listeners when we ran this report this morning. They're already 24, almost $25. So their straddle was 285. In the past, they've moved $1.50. Excuse me. I was going to ask you if that 285 is too much, but they've already moved over $5 today. So yeah, it's too cheap. Spoiler alert. Let's keep on rolling, listeners. Oh, by the way, the season right now hanging out at 118%, coming down from our lofty 129%, but still north of our long-term average of 114%. So still a banger. And you know it's always a banger. It's the Odd Block. So let's get to it.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Odd Block, the portion of the show where we get weird, we get wild, we talk about some funky paper, including out here in Uncle Mike's neck of the woods, precious metals. So I'm going to ask him about his thoughts on this one in a little bit as well. But first, let's go out to a name we've talked about before, but it's been a little while. It's I Am Gold Corp. Can you take a guess what it is that they do, listeners? Trading 506 today, off 60 cents or nearly 11%. So maybe some of the bloom coming off the precious metals rose. Kind of hard to argue. I mean, it's had quite the run this year. This name just year to date is up 107% or 2.63 handles just this year. Calendar year, you go back a full, that's just year to date. If you go back a full calendar year from now, listeners, it's up 132% or nearly $3. So it's been a good year for IM Gold, which maybe puts this trade into context. Somebody coming in this morning, listeners, and saying, March 4 puts, how are they? So about $1 on the money puts, listeners. They got a market of no bid at 25 cents. Ain't that a doozy? What do you want to do? No bid. We will pay nothing for those puts. But we will sell them to you for the lofty price of 25 cents. They said, you know what? We'll pay 21 cents 7,500 times. So that's pretty much what they did. The stock was $5.13 at the time. Actually, earnings between now and March expiration, which you probably would expect. And those next announcement is on February 13th, which also makes this interesting. But it has the whiff. I'll have to go look and see because that execution is so, I think the technical term is funkalicious, listeners out there. I'll have to go look and see if something else went up after so we can maybe suss out a little bit. But let's start there. Mr. Rock Lobster, you think they were buying these or you think they found a decent bid? I mean, who's paying 21 cents to them if the market's no bid at 25? That's a hell of a sale if they got them off. So I think they bought them, but what do you think? And then B, what are your thoughts on hedging yourself at the 4 handle in IM Gold, sir?
It's quite a drawdown in gold today. Like, it's kind of shocking, actually. Are they? It's almost. You know, I don't want to sound like the grump, but it's almost a little too much anti-inflation happiness with the numbers coming out this week. But you know, you know, we sit here and we look at this, but what's the return on that? At 25 cents till. I would almost rather just sell those things for 21 cents.
I know you would, definitely.
So again, you're sitting on your money forever. I mean, it's sort of like by the way, and it's not a CD, but you know, 25 cents, you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to sit here and take delivery of this gold stock at, you know, $4, which probably is not a bad price here. I'm just looking at some of the, well, you know, right before this run up, it was $2. I don't know if it's one of those things where if they get control of it, I think they bought them, but you're betting on you know, that's a sea change in sentiment for gold right now. I think gold is kind of at the put up or shut up stage, but a 10% drop right now, this is some serious dough getting out of here. It feels like every hedge fund in the world is bailing on this trade and they're looking for the next thing. That's how I see that. But I mean, it is not an unreasonable shot to buy those puts with that duration, given where gold has come from this year. But there's a lot of assumptions baked in that.
Mr. Uncle Mike, you're a resident precious metals guy. What are your thoughts on these puts on the 4 strike for 21 cents in IM Gold? You like these locking in? It's been a good run. I mean, the 4 handle is a bit of a ways away, but, you know, there are worse things. Or you like the Rock Lobster and myself probably prefer to sell them.
Yeah, I think I would prefer to sell something that's at 0 cents by 25 cents, because if I'm buying something like that, I think it is just maybe someone's had a run. For whatever reason, maybe they need to hedge it. I guess I don't understand this one very well, so I would prefer to be a seller of this if it were me.
I went and looked while we were talking, listeners, and on the entire day, only 7,500 of those puts have traded, which is why the market was no bid at 25. Not even a one lot before or after, try to get some sense of what the actual market is coming out. So yeah, there's no way they sold those. They bought those. So I don't care how big of a customer you are. Nothing's trading. The market's no bid at 25. You're not going to be able to sell it to someone for 21 unless they really like you. I will pay my offer almost for you, dear customer. But I digress. Let's keep rolling. Let's go out from IM Gold. Let's go back to a name we talked about a few times recently. This is JOBY Aviation, ticker symbol JOBY. They are that vertical takeoff and landing name, and they're taking off today. Get that? You like that pun? Let's see what I did there. Up 90 cents or 17.25%, trading 612. Over the past week, they're up 21%. Year to date, they're kind of flat. And on the year, going back to a calendar year a year ago, they're up 65 cents right now. This name's had a range of $4.50 to the downside, $7.70 to the upside. Looks like they hit that $7.70 level back in July. They kind of been vacillating all over the place. If this sounds familiar, we talked about it back on October 15th, almost exactly a month ago, somebody came in and just decided to get a little bit of premium off the top. The stock was $4.43. They sold the 4.5 calls expiring that week within 3 days. For 15 cents on the bid, they did it 3,800 times. And they ended up kind of wearing it on those. The stock closed at $5.61 3 days later. So they kind of got run over. That was a bit of an ouchie on those. I'm looking here at the stock. Yeah, it had a nice run right around the time that they sold those bad boys. So that was bad timing. We haven't talked about them since then. And so what do we see today, listeners? A couple of weird things. The one that really caught our eye of Sauron was this print of the April 10s. Yes, I said the 10s. The stock I had a 5 handle earlier this morning, so that was close to doubling. It's a 6 handle now, obviously. But with the stock at 588, they came in and said, April 10s, how are they? They got quarter bid at 30, which is a crazy tight market, which makes me wonder if something else was afoot. We did see some other verticals going up today. I kind of wonder if maybe they parked an offer to sell these against that vertical. It was a Dees vertical, I believe, but it wasn't all in April, and it wasn't at the same time. So I'm kind of speculating. There was just a flurry of paper out here in JOBY today, listeners, including, again, nearly 6,000 of these April 10s trading, lifting the offer for 30 cents. Again, a weirdly tight market, so I do want to dig a little more into that. There are earnings between now and April expiration. They're on February 26th. If you want a little bit more normal paper, dare I say it, somebody also came in this morning and said, no 5.5, so now in the money calls. Stock was 5.5 at the time. They said, how are they? They got 15 cents at 20. They said, we will pay 20 cents 3,100 times. They're laughing all the way to the bank on those right now because the stock is 6.11 right now. So, Mr. Rock Lobster, what are your thoughts on this explosion of call paper once again in this vertical takeoff and landing name, including my favorite, the April 10s for 30 cents?
Well, you had to think people are getting kind of giddy here on the like the self-driving, I'm just saying that there might be a little bit more willingness to try stuff. Your own self-driving vehicle, whatever, flying vehicle. Yeah. I think might be a little bit more willingness to try some stuff out. And that could be reflected. Did they roll this up or did they just, or two separate purchases? I guess two separate purchases, but it's one of those things where it could happen. And I like the longer, although the 10 strike, but you look at a stock like this, how fast a stock like this can move from $5 to $10. When there's some short interest and all of a sudden, folks are starting to, believe. So again, I would caution all viewers that these little tiny stocks with little tiny options, it doesn't take much to squeeze them when there's no sellers. And it probably doesn't take a lot to push it higher, but the reality is I don't think they're either one looks totally unreasonable. Now that one, it appears that somebody paid 20 cents for the 5.5. So they're already, the stock's trading 6.11. So it's already flying. So, they're on the right side early. That's all I can say there. So somebody should be cashing a check on those.
They are on the right side of history right now. Who's always on the right side of history? It's Uncle Mike. So let's get to him now. A little bit of the old strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the Strategy Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Strategy Block, the portion of the show where we break down, or I should say Uncle Mike breaks down, probably what he's going to talk about on his next upcoming webinar. Mr. Uncle Mike, what you got for us, sir?
Well, first off, you mentioned the right side of history. Let's talk about the right side of history. Today is Veterans Day, November 11th, formerly known as Armistice Day, at the 11th hour of the 11th day at the 11th month, hence the significance of 11s. The Armistice Day being the end of World War I. And then, of course, we have, it's now Veterans Day, honoring all of our men and women who served. So just want to give a shout out to all of them. Thank you for your service. You guys are truly the heroes of planet Earth. So thank you for that. Now, with that being said, I would like to talk about a little bit about what we'll be talking about in the webinar after the show today. I want to go through hedging a portfolio with index options and just the importance of beta. So, for example, let's say that you have a portfolio and let's say it were to match the S&P 500 identical. And with that, let's say the portfolio was $600,000. Now, if the portfolio matched the movement of the S&P identically, you would just buy a one lot on the SPX. It would be fairly simple. However, let's say you also have a $600,000 portfolio, but your beta is a little bit off, meaning you have maybe a little bit extra NVIDIA in there, or you have a little bit extra holdings that make it so that this portfolio moves a little bit more than what the S&P normally would, but in conjunction with the S&P still. So in other words, if the S&P goes up, this portfolio would go up. If the S&P were to go down, this portfolio would go down, but just a little bit more. That would mean it's a beta portfolio. Now, what level of beta is it? Let's say it was a 2.0 beta. That would mean it would move twice as much as the S&P, either for better or for worse. If it's a 1.5 beta, then that would mean it would move 1.5 times as much as the S&P 500. And so when hedging, even though the portfolio might be, and I'm using $600,000 just because of the fact that the S&P happens to be at 6,000 right now, you could break this down to 60,000 if you wanted to use SPY or XSP, of course, but I'm staring at SPX right now, so that's why I'm using that as an example. But even though the portfolio would have that dollar amount to it, if your portfolio has the beta element to it, a one lot would not necessarily be the proper hedge amount for the portfolio. Now, what would be? Well, you have to do what's called beta weighting, and you have to make sure the portfolio is beta weighted if you want to get the proper hedge. Now, should you do in the money, at the money, out of the money? Should you do a collar? Should you do a spread? Whatever. That's for you to decide. However, what we're going to be going through today on the webinar is we're going to be discussing beta weighting. So if you want to learn a little bit more about it, feel free to tune in. Go to Adaptive Webinars right after the adaptivewebinars.com right after this show and tune in. We're very excited about talking about some beta weighting.
If that's not the sexiest thing in the world, listeners, I don't know, except maybe what we have in store for you as we go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, listeners, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we break down what we're keeping an eye on for the rest of the week. We also kick off our question of the week, which just went live before the show, already going fast and furious. If you want to get your name in there, get your voice in there, make your voice heard, at options on the old Twitter/X is the place to go to make it happen. Our question of the week right now, we said, hey, volatility went to die the last time Trump took office. VIX hit single digits and stayed there for a large part of the year. Don't we all remember the heady days of 2017? Do you think we'll see a repeat in 2025? Very simply, let's just break it down to brass tacks. Do you think VIX will close in single digits at least once next year? So we're not saying is it going to be, a 9 handle for 6 months. Just is it going to close in single digits at least once next year? Mr. Rock Lobster, what do you say? Yes or no? B, what do you think our audience is saying? And then C, what are you keeping an eye on till the Thursday show?
Wow, single digits. I'm going to say once. It happens about every 10 years, so this is about the right time. So I'll say once. I think the listeners, though, will not say that. I will say they don't think it's going to be once. And I'm looking for some inflation data. So again, my anecdotal food and gas, things haven't gone up, and I haven't seen things rip a whole bunch, but they haven't really dropped back either. So my guess is the data will come in line. So I'm looking for that at the end of the week.
Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. Do you think we'll kiss single digits at least once next year in VIX? B, what do you think our audience is going for? And C, what are you keeping an eye on, sir?
Well, I think it definitely will once. I'll just play the odds on that over the course of 365 days or 250 trading days, I should say. I'll take those odds. And in terms of our audience, I think they agree with me, actually. And in terms of where we are looking for next week, seeing if we can hold or break 6,000. And that's kind of what I'm staring at right now. I think that we need to look at that and keep an eye on the precious metals as well, because they are going to be kind of a canary in the coal mine with this whole inflation thing.
Just for some frame of reference, listeners, on the VIX cash, which is what we're looking at here, the lowest close over the past year, 1062. So we did flirt. Didn't quite get there, but we did flirt with some single digits. You could probably guess when that is, listeners, usually in the historically quiet periods of the year. But right now, our audience is fading the heck out of single digit. Just keeps ticking as I'm talking. It's trying kind of hard to come to grips with it. You folks are voting fast and furious. Get over there at options right now. But right now, as we speak, nearly 65% of you, 64.9% say no, not going to kiss a single digit close next year. 35.1% say yes. Agree, disagree, get over there at options and make your voice heard. Unfortunately, that is going to do it for us on the old option block this week. But you know what? If you want even more coming up in a little bit on the pretty much hottest sector on the planet right now, crypto, stay tuned. We're coming back in a little bit with the crypto rundown. It should be a banger. Is this past week the craziest week in crypto history? It's an argument for it. We'll break it all down with our buddy Mr. Greg in a little bit over there. But before we go, Mr. Rock Lobster, if folks want more Rock Lobster goodness, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, you just got to go to optionpit.com, 888-TRADE-01, 10% off anything we sell. My products are starting to kick a little butt. If you want to learn how to trade options or be an investor with options, check it out. And you actually learn how to use the products correctly.
All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. Where should folks go if they want more Uncle Mike goodness?
stcharleswealth.com. Check out my website if you're looking for a financial advisor who delves in the option product. If you want to hear more of my webinars, go to adaptivewebinars.com and you can see a webinar. Also, follow me on Twitter at Mike Tosaw, Tosaw.
All right, listeners, and of course, you want to keep, Uncle Mike was just talking about the Viceroy a decade ago. You want to keep this show coming at you for another decade, then, of course, visit our sponsors over there. Thank them for supporting the show you love. This week, it is Tasty Trade here on the old Monday show. You know where to go, tastytrade.com. Head on over there. Say, hey, we heard about you on the old Option Block show. We love that you're keeping the flow of options content coming to us, because guess what? You do that, then more comes your way, listeners. It's a virtuous circle at the end of the day. Speaking of circles, we'll be back again in a little bit for the crypto rundown, then back again with our usual array of content till we're back again here on Thursday. I have it with good authority that we will be joined on the Thursday episode, not just by the Flow Master, but by our good buddy, the Oracle of New Hampshire himself, Mr. Matt Amberson. He's been super jazzed. He's elbowing his way onto the Option Block program, so should be a jam-packed Thursday, and we'll see you then. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by Tasty Trade. You take the unbeaten path. You root for the away team. You wear shorts in winter. You don't put ketchup on a hot dog. So why wouldn't you trade with a broker that lets you go your own way? Tasty Trade. Stocks, options, futures, and more. You choose. You trade. Chart moves with hundreds of custom indicators. Stare at the candles till you see them in your sleep. See it, click it, trade it on mobile, web, or desktop. Supported by a trade desk that knows how traders think. The data, the tools, the knowledge. Get what you need to make smart moves. Go to tastytrade.com/pod to see for yourself, genius. Tasty Trade Incorporated is a registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA, NFA, and SIPC. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.